I moved into the house in late September. It was an old two-story place on the outskirts of Chicago, about 20 minutes outside the city. I had just gotten engaged, and my fiancé and I thought we'd found a good deal, a place with character, big enough to start a future. The first thing I noticed about the house was the basement. It had a narrow wooden door behind the kitchen, almost hidden in shadow. The first time I opened it, the smell hit me hard, damp like old wood and mold. The light bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered even after I replaced it twice. My fiancé said we should just keep it locked unless we needed storage, so we stacked a few boxes near the door and didn't go down there again for the first few weeks. Then late one night while I was alone in the kitchen, I heard something. It was faint, like shuffling or scratching, coming from directly below me. I froze, thinking maybe a raccoon had gotten in. I knocked on the floor with the broom handle, but the noise stopped. The next night, the same sound came back, but this time it was louder. Like dragging, wood on concrete. I opened the basement door, stood at the top of the steps, and listened. I didn't hear anything. But just as I was about to shut the door, I swear I heard a soft exhale. I didn't tell my fiancé. I didn't want to scare her. Instead, I laughed it off and told myself it was just the old house settling. But after that night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Almost every night around 1 or 2 in the morning, I'd hear it. Something was moving beneath the house. And sometimes it sounded like it was getting closer to the stairs. About a week after the noises started, I finally worked up the nerve to go down there. It was around 1:30 in the morning when I heard the dragging again, louder this time, more deliberate. My fiancé was asleep upstairs. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The basement steps creaked under my weight. I'd only been down there once before, during the move-in, and even then, I didn't stay long. Now it felt colder, the kind of cold that clings to your skin, even though the air wasn't moving. As I reached the bottom, my light swept across the basement. It was mostly empty, concrete floor, brick walls, a few support beams, and a single dusty shelf with some cleaning supplies left by the previous owner. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In the back corner, half hidden behind a hanging tarp, was a small wooden panel. At first, I thought it was just part of the wall, but when I got closer, I realized it was a door built into the brick. It was small, barely tall enough for a child to walk through without ducking. There was no handle, just a tiny metal latch that looked rusted shut. The air around it smelled sour, like something wet had been trapped inside for a long time. I stared at it for a while, unsure whether I should try to open it. Then I leaned in, pressing my ear gently against the wood, and I heard breathing. Not mine, not human. It was deep, slow, and wet, like something sleeping behind the door. Something big. I stepped back quickly and nearly dropped my phone. The breathing stopped the moment I moved. I backed away slowly, not turning my back to the door until I was at the stairs. I climbed them 2 at a time, shut the basement door, and locked it. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about that sound, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't the first time I'd heard that kind of breathing. I'd heard it once before, the first night we moved in. I just hadn't noticed, because it sounded exactly like the wind until now. After that night, I avoided the basement completely. I didn't tell my fiancé anything, but I started locking the door and pretending it was just for safety. Still, the sounds continued, every night, always between 1 and 3 in the morning. Some nights it was soft dragging like before, but other nights it was faster, scraping, tapping, even thumps against the basement ceiling, like something was trying to follow us through the floor. One evening, while my fiancée was out of town visiting her parents, I decided to set up my old baby monitor facing the basement door. It was a simple audio device, no camera, just sound. I left it on my nightstand and went to bed around 11. At 2:14 in the morning, the monitor crackled awake. I was already half asleep, but the sound jolted me up. I heard breathing, that same wet, rattling breath. Then faint footsteps, not on the stairs, on the first floor. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and crept out of the bedroom. I could hear the footsteps moving slowly through the kitchen. Then silence. When I reached the hallway, the basement door was wide open. There were muddy prints on the wood floor, long, thin, dragging tracks that looked like fingers or claws. I stepped back, heart pounding, and shut the basement door. I nailed it shut. Not just the lock, actual nails. That morning, I checked the baby monitor's memory. It had recorded 3 minutes of sound. At the end of the clip, right before the signal cut out, I heard something whisper. It said my name twice. The next day, we packed our things, told the landlord the plumbing smelled like sewage. We never went back. A few weeks later, I got an anonymous message on Reddit. I had posted a question about strange basement noises, just trying to get it off my chest. Someone replied with one sentence, "If you heard it breathing, it already knows your name." That message was posted by a deleted account. And the timestamp? Exactly 1:34 a.m. Two years ago, my friends and I went on a weekend camping trip near Flagstaff, Arizona. There were 4 of us, myself, my friend Michael, his cousin Ben, and our friend Ryan. We had all grown up in Phoenix, so the idea of escaping the heat and sleeping under pine trees sounded perfect. We drove up on a Friday afternoon and found a clearing. Near the base of a small mountain, far from any campsites or park stations, Michael had a drone he brought along to get some aerial footage for fun. We set up 2 tents, built a fire pit, and cracked open a few beers. The first night was quiet. We heard owls, some distant coyotes, but nothing unusual. It got cold fast after midnight, and we all crawled into our sleeping bags by 1 in the morning. The next morning, while we were making coffee, Ryan pointed toward a distant tree line, maybe 200 yards from our tents. There was a new tent sitting out there, beige, small. We hadn't seen it when we arrived. None of us saw or heard anyone set it up. We joked about it. Maybe it belonged to a survivalist or someone who wanted privacy. Still, it made us uneasy. That tent wasn't there the night before. And none of us heard a car or footsteps. Michael flew his drone up to get a better look. It hovered above the tree line for a while, but we didn't see anyone near the tent. No movement, no smoke, no sign of life. Later that evening, we shouted in that direction just to be polite. "Hey, just letting you know we're camping nearby." No response. Not even rustling. That night, we sat around the fire, trying not to let it get to us. But something felt off. The woods were silent, too silent. No crickets, no wind. Just stillness. Around 1 in the morning, while we were starting to turn in, Ryan whispered, "Don't look fast, but I think someone's watching us." He nodded toward the trees. I looked slowly and I saw it. A dark figure standing just beyond the firelight. Motionless, no flashlight. No face, just standing there. When we stood up and turned to confront it, it was gone. No footsteps. No crunch of twigs, just gone. We didn't sleep much that night. We kept the fire going as long as we could, but by 3 in the morning it burned low. None of us said it out loud, but we were all scared. That figure we saw, it wasn't a normal camper. No flashlight, no gear, just standing there like a statue. The next morning, we checked around the camp and followed the direction. We saw the figure, nothing. No footprints, no broken branches. And when we looked toward that distant tent, it was still there. Still zipped shut. Michael flew the drone again. He hovered it low, maybe 20 feet above the strange tent. We watched the live feed on his phone. No movement. Just that same beige fabric, weathered and still. Then Ben said something that chilled us. "If that guy's been watching us all night, where is his fire?" That's when it hit us. The temperature had dropped to the 30s overnight. Anyone out here would have needed warmth. But that side of the forest was dark and cold. We shouted again, "Hey, everything okay over there?" No response. That afternoon, we voted to move camp. We packed up and hiked about a mile deeper into the forest. It was more remote, but we figured distance would give us peace of mind. That night, around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a sound outside our new camp. Not footsteps. Something softer, like breathing. Slow, steady, and close. I stayed still and listened. Then I heard a twig snap right outside the tent. I whispered to Ben, who was in the same tent, but he was already sitting up. His eyes were wide. We heard what sounded like fabric being touched. Our tent wall brushed lightly from the outside. Then silence. Suddenly, from the other tent, Michael screamed. Just once, a loud, sharp shout that cut through the stillness. We scrambled out and ran to him. Michael was standing outside, shaking. He said he woke up and saw someone crouched inside the tent with him. Not moving, just crouched at the foot of his sleeping bag, face turned away. When he turned on his flashlight, the figure was gone. No sound, no opening of the tent flap, just gone. And worse, his zipper hadn't moved. We left the forest at sunrise. None of us said much during the hike back. Our nerves were shot. We hadn't slept, and each of us kept looking over our shoulders like we were being followed. Back at the parking lot, we packed our gear into the cars in silence. Michael held onto his drone bag like it was something sacred. That night, we met at Ryan's apartment to review the drone. Footage from the second day, the last flight Michael made before we moved campsites. We plugged his phone into the TV. Most of it showed pine trees, distant hills, and clear sky. Then the drone moved in toward the mysterious tent again. It hovered directly above it, then slowly tilted the camera downward. That's when we all saw it. There was a person, or at least something shaped like a person, lying next to the tent, half buried in pine needles. It looked wrong, like a body but not fresh. The skin was pale gray and the arms were bent at impossible angles. It wasn't there the day before. The drone circled around, and just before the footage cut out, we saw the tent flap move, slowly. From the inside, we paused the video and stared at each other. No one had approached that tent. We were sure of it. Michael backed up the footage, frame by frame. And then we saw something we didn't notice at first. For 3 frames, less than a second, you could see a face, peeking out from behind the tent. It wasn't angry. It wasn't scared. It was smiling. That same night, Michael received a message from an unknown number. No text, just a still image, a screenshot from his drone video, the frame where the face was visible. But the version he got was different, zoomed in, sharper. The smiling face was staring directly at the camera, and under the image was one sentence: "You shouldn't have left." Michael changed his number, deleted his drone account. He hasn't flown it since. As for the rest of us, we never went back. Sometimes, though, late at night, I still think about that tent, and I wonder, is it still there, or did it follow us back? I've been a truck driver for over 15 years. I've seen a lot of strange things on the road: desert mirages, animals in the middle of nowhere, even accidents that felt off. But nothing ever stuck with me like what happened one winter night in Amarillo, Texas. There was a bad snowstorm coming in. Dispatch warned all of us to pull over and rest until morning. I found a small roadside motel just off the highway. It looked run down but open. A flickering neon sign buzzed above the entrance. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit. The front desk clerk was an older man with a raspy voice. I asked if they had any rooms. He nodded and handed me a key, room 114, second floor. Then he added something strange. "We only got 3 guests tonight," he said. "You'll have the whole left side to yourself." I took the stairs, passing a vending machine that made a weird humming noise. The hallway was long and quiet. Brown carpet, yellow wallpaper peeling in places. I found my room, unlocked it, and went inside. It smelled like old fabric and cleaning chemicals, but I didn't care. I was tired and the wind outside was howling. I turned on the heater, changed into a dry shirt, and laid down on the stiff motel bed. Around 1 in the morning, I woke up. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard something else: soft footsteps, slow, padded, moving down the hallway, just outside my room. I sat up and listened. The steps stopped directly in front of my door. Then nothing. Just silence. I walked over and looked through the peephole. A girl was standing there. She couldn't have been more than 10. Long black hair, pale skin, wearing a white nightgown. She didn't knock, didn't speak. She just stood there facing the door. I blinked, and then she was gone. I opened the door quickly, looked left and right, nothing. The hallway was empty. I checked the room across from mine. Still dark, curtains drawn. I went back inside, locked the door, and stayed up the rest of the night. At checkout the next morning, I asked the clerk, "Hey, do families stay here often?" He looked at me confused, then said, "No kids allowed, not since 2003. When I asked why, he said, "Because a little girl died here, in room 112. I couldn't get that little girl out of my mind. The way she just stood there, silent, emotionless, like she wasn't really there. After I left the motel, I drove for hours through the snow, trying to shake off the feeling. But every time I blinked, I'd see her face, pale and still, staring right at the door. About a week later, I got assigned another long route through Texas. I didn't plan on stopping anywhere near Amarillo, but after a flat tire delayed me, I had no choice. By the time I pulled into the city, it was late. I didn't even realize where I was until I saw that same neon motel sign glowing red in the dark. I should have kept driving, but I was exhausted. When I walked into the lobby, a different man was at the front desk. Younger. I asked if there were any rooms available. He handed me a key. Room 114, again. I hesitated, but I didn't say anything. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe not. The hallway looked just as I remembered, dim, cold with the same buzzing vending machine. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and sat on the edge of the bed without even turning on the light. Around 1:30 in the morning, I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Not on the door. On the wall. The wall shared with room 112. I froze. It didn't make sense. That room had no guest, no check-in according to the front desk. Then came 3 more knocks, closer this time. They echoed through the wall behind the headboard. I stood up and pressed my ear against it. Nothing. I backed away, breathing hard. That's when I noticed something strange. My duffel bag, which I had left zipped in on the floor, was now open. Inside, my clothes were soaked, like they had been dropped in a bathtub. But the room was dry. The carpet was dry. The ceiling didn't leak. There was no explanation. Then I heard it again. Not knocking this time, laughing. A small girlish laugh. Coming from inside room 112. I rushed out, went straight to the front desk, and demanded to know who was in that room. The clerk looked confused. Sir, room 112 hasn't been opened in over 10 years. The door's been sealed since the accident. I asked what accident. He just shook his head. You don't want to know. But I already did. I knew what I saw. And worse, I knew that whatever was in that room, it remembered me. After that second night at the motel, I promised myself I'd never stay there again. But I couldn't stop thinking about what happened. The knocks, the laughter, the open bag. I needed proof. Something to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. So 2 weeks later, I bought a cheap security camera and booked the same room again, 114. I told the front desk I was traveling for work. They didn't ask questions. That night, I set up the camera facing the door. It had night vision and motion detection. I left it running, went to bed, and tried to stay awake. Around 1 in the morning, I drifted off. The room was silent except for the low hum of the heater. When I woke up at 6, the camera light was blinking red. Motion detected. I packed up and left immediately. Drove to a rest stop an hour away and loaded the footage onto my laptop. At first, there was nothing. Just me tossing in bed. Then at 1:27, the hallway light outside my door began to flicker. 1:29, the doorknob moved. Just a little. Then at 1:31, a shape appeared. A girl. She walked slowly into the frame, barefoot, wearing a white nightgown. Her hair covered most of her face. She stood in front of the door, perfectly still, for almost 2 full minutes. Then she turned her head slowly toward the camera. That's when I saw her eyes. They weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were hollow, like glass. She raised one hand and touched the lens. The screen went black. The next 10 minutes of the footage were corrupted. The file just cut back in at 1:42. The door was still closed. I was still sleeping, but the girl was gone. I uploaded the video to a private forum for truckers, somewhere people share strange things from the road. A few users replied. One guy messaged me privately. He said he stayed at that same motel years ago, same hallway. His message was short. Room 112 is a trap. That girl isn't a ghost. She's something worse. Don't ever go back. I haven't, but I still have the footage. And sometimes when I pause it at the exact moment she turns toward the camera, I swear her expression changes, like she's watching me back.